Hello all you Command and Conquer loving cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic and today we're going to be reviewing indie RTS game Reconquest. Reconquest is an indie real-time strategy base building game developed by indie developer Stormcube Games. The game is set after World War III. World War III happened, the planet got nuked to all hell, everything was heavily irradiated, and so the surviving human race went underground into shelters. After many years had passed and the radiation levels had become tolerable, humankind resurfaced intent on reconquering the planet once again. These shelters turned into colonies, which then turned into city-states, and now the world is divided into factions, and this is where the game begins. Reconquest looks to capture the essence of some classic RTS games with the likes of Command and Conquer, and the game in terms of aesthetics and its visuals reminds me very much of a cross between Command and Conquer, Dune, and a little bit of Mad Max thrown in there for good measure. Command and Conquer is a series that I hold close to my heart, and it contains as a series some of my favourite RTS games of all time. And Reconquest really does capture that essence of its gameplay in the sense that it's a real-time strategy game that contains base building, which is something that we don't see all that often in the RTS genre in modern day. It's something that for the most part is left out of many real-time strategy games, and it's certainly nice to see a return to the classic RTS style gameplay. As an indie game with a small team and a small budget, Reconquest does so many things right. There are 3 game modes in the game. You have a campaign mode, which you can choose from 2 factions. Each faction has around 10 individual story missions, whereby in between each mission there's comics that are in the place of cutscenes where the story gets told. Those cutscenes, they're okay. The comic quality isn't that particularly good. The writing it's mediocre at best, but it does its job as intended. There's also a skirmish mode where you can compete with 3 AIs at maximum on 8 different maps, and there's a trapped mode, which is essentially a challenge mode where there are 8 different challenges to complete. There is the odd exclusion of course, a multiplayer mode. There is no multiplayer mode in Reconquest, which is a real shame, and I understand why the developers made that decision, because often multiplayer is very expensive to place into an indie game, but at the same time, if you really want to capture the essence of Command and Conquer, then a multiplayer mode and a map editor is borderline required. Core of the gameplay works as you would expect any Command and Conquer style inspired game to work. You start off with a command center, you build your base, you produce units, and you try to destroy the enemy. There are a couple of disappointments inherent to the design of Reconquest, however. For example, the UI is not particularly informative, nor is it particularly well designed. There is a lack of a tutorial in the game, which for someone like me is absolutely fine because I play a lot of RTS games, but developers need to realize that at any one time there are new gamers being created. There are new people coming into gaming space, and if they chose this as their first RTS game to ever play, they would have absolutely no idea on what to do, how the controls worked, and what the mechanics were. And the game is like this throughout. There are just odd exclusions and oversights that I cannot understand why they're in there, other than that the developers really did not put themselves in the end user's perspective. For example, the main menu mode, when you pause the game, especially in a campaign mode, it gives me the option to jump into a skirmish battle and leave the campaign, but it gives me no option to restart the campaign mission that I'm in, meaning that if I'm on the losing side of a campaign mission and I know I'm going to die, I have to wait until I'm completely destroyed in every respect before I'm able to restart the mission. When it comes to the combat, for the most part the combat works really well. However, the game has fallen into some of the pitfalls that RTS games always fall in. Now, when it comes to the actual flow of the game, it works really well. It's very fast paced. The game looks great, the animations look great. They're not AAA quality, but they certainly capture the essence of what they were trying to do, and some of the animations and the unit design works really well. In particular, I was a big fan of the unit design. They didn't try to go all sci-fi and go too far into the future with alien technology or laser beams and energy weapons. You know, you have very traditional tank cannons, there's rockets and machine guns, and it works very well for that kind of post-apocalyptic Mad Max feel. My biggest gripe with the combat is the fact that yet another RTS has made infantry completely useless, because infantry in the game, you have three types of infantry. You have riflemen, you have rocketeers, and you have snipers. Riflemen and snipers are great for taking out other infantry, and rocketeers are good for taking out tanks and buildings. The problem is that they are all squishy as hell, and a couple of shots and the entire infantry squad will be down, which makes them very expensive and completely useless, and only really good for cannon fodder, which you can't really afford. Which means that it tends to be the case of once you have a tank factory up and running, you're gonna go all vehicles every single time. And why wouldn't you? Tanks and other vehicles are going to stay alive longer, and they pack more of a punch. On top of this, there's no way to repair any of your units, so if you build a heavy tank, which is really expensive and really powerful, and it gets injured in battle, there's no way to return it to your base and repair it. You just have to let it die, which I guess maybe was an intentional decision for balance purposes, but it never really made any sense for me. And I think overall the game is like that. There are certainly great things about this game. I think the aesthetic is great, the overall feel of the game is great. The gameplay for the most part is great, but it just lacks an overall sense of polish. And, you know, especially for someone who absolutely loves RTS games, and for people who enjoy RTS games, they're going to enjoy this game for a little bit, but then they're going to start seeing the flaws. Like the gas collectors, they have pathing issues, which are the resource collectors. Both factions are ridiculously similar to each other. You know, at least in Command & Conquer, you had the Brotherhood of Nod and you had the GDI, which had different units and fairly different playstyles in that sense. They weren't completely different, but they had distinct differences, and then they had also distinct similarities. In this game, everything is the same apart from the overall look of the units, which is a real shame. The campaign was a letdown, not in terms of the story, which was mediocre at best, but in the fact that there was no objective-based gameplay. Yes, you had to start some missions differently than others, so you might have been on the defensive at the start, but there was no real objective. It was just kill all the enemies, and that does get repetitive at certain points. You know, there's no capture this point, hold this location. It was all just kill, kill, kill. And frankly, it does get boring in a story single-player campaign against an AI that doesn't have multiple difficulty levels. That does get very repetitive, does get, you know, very easy to anticipate. And yes, newer players to RTSs will struggle against the AI for a certain period of time, but experienced players will be able to get over the AI hurdle very, very quickly. It's certainly a game that has a lot going for it, but is plagued by a sense of unpolished and missing features. And I think that in the future, if they ever do a Reconquest 2, those will probably be ironed out. I certainly hope that they patch some of the balance issues out, they patch things out like the AI issues and the gas collector issues, and I certainly hope all the best for them. Will RTS fans enjoy it? Yes, I certainly think RTS fans will enjoy this game. However, at a price point of $20, I cannot recommend that you pick it up at that price point. I think the best thing for anyone to do to really get the value out of the game, especially for what it delivers and the problems that it has, it's certainly worth waiting for a sale to pick it up. And that is my review of Reconquest. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Let me know what your thoughts are on the game in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and share the video to your social media, and as always, I will see you next time.